Should you buy the FX30 in 2025? My answer is yes, but let's dive into it. Hey guys, welcome back to the channel. And if you're new here, my name is Ricardo. I'm a videographer from Auckland, New Zealand. And today we're going to discuss on why maybe you should think about buying the FX30 in 2025. This camera is a few years old now, but it still holds its weight amongst many other cameras in the field. I bought this camera about 2 years ago and is one of my favorite cameras I've owned so far. I started with an A7 III, then I bought a used A7 IV, which is what you're watching right now, and then I bought the FX30. Reason being is I wanted something that could grow into a B cam, something that maybe one day I'll buy an A7S III or an FX3 and it'll match quite nicely with the two cameras as an A and B camera. Part of the reason I bought this camera was also because of how cheap it was to get lenses, and when I was just starting I only had so much budget, and you had to sort of think about what can I get right now to get me going, instead of getting into debt, instead of buying the latest and greatest. So definitely helped me create an arsenal of gear that I could do my job. At the time I was doing weddings, and at that point in time I definitely needed 2 cameras, or at least 3 depending on what the package required in terms of A and B for bride and groom, and then 1 for roaming around, getting reactions and all that stuff from the guests in the weddings. So definitely I had the A7 IV, I had the ZV-E10 Mark I at the time, and the FX30, and those 3 cameras sort of is how I got my wedding videography started. Then I quickly found out that the A7 IV overheated. I saw many other reviews that said, no, I've never had it overheat, I've never had it shut down on me. It happened to me twice. Luckily I had a B cam, and believe it or not, the ZV-E10 Mark I did not overheat, whereas my A7 IV did overheat. So that led me to think, hey, maybe I need something with a fan, and that's when I bought the FX30, even if it's just as a side angle. It was definitely a savior, because the second time that this one overheated, this one was still rolling, so I was able to at least capture the speech and finish the job and actually not have any issues in post, which I would have been pulling my hair out if I hadn't had a backup, that's for sure. The first reason as well is price. This camera here, the FX30, is retailed at the moment at $1,800 US. I just looked at B&H as of today when I posted this video, whereas the FX3 on my right here is worth $3,800 or $3,900 depending on where you buy it from. There's a big difference in price, and it definitely can go a long way in other things such as better lenses, better lights, and you definitely, if you're just starting out, you're not going to have $3,900 or whatever equates in your currency just lying around. You definitely want to maximize your budget to accommodate for all your needs, not your wants. So an FX3 might be, I really want that, but I actually really need an FX30. So think about your budget and don't overstretch. Don't get into debt just to get what you really want. Definitely think about that, and think business-wise how you can use your current budget to allow a better arsenal of cameras and lenses that you need for the job. If you're doing weddings, you're definitely going to need 2 to 3 cameras, no doubt. 1 camera, bite me, you need more than 1 camera. You're not going to get everything with just 1 camera. And at best, if you're charging a lot of money to people, you want to have those speeches, you want to have those vows. If 1 camera is gone, what are you going to do? You can't ask them to repeat what they were saying. It only happens once. It's a live event. You cannot say, hey, take 2. Sorry, my camera overheated. Or sorry, my camera's not working. You're going to need 2 cameras. Give me a break. So when they say gear doesn't matter, yes, to a degree, I agree. Maybe you don't need the FX3. Maybe you don't need that new G Master lens. Maybe you can get a crop sensor camera, APS-C lens. Hey, it's all cameras at this day and age are great. They're all 4K, they're all 10-bit 422. You're not gonna have much of an issue. As long as you can tell the story, as long as you can actually provide value, and as long as your customers are happy with what they're seeing, hearing, a slightly better image, yeah, you can obviously charge for that. And that's when you start growing in your skills and you start learning about how to do things, and you can definitely raise those prices. So I would definitely think about your budget, think about what your business needs, and not what you want. It's more what the business needs so you can grow. And definitely, like I said, make a smart decision. So for me, I started with an FX30, now I've got an FX3, so I can pair the two together so they all match. A second point would be a lens choice. So part of the reason that obviously I bought the FX30 is because it was an APS-C sensor, and I already had at the time the A7 IV. So I had a Sigma 28-70, which that was, I can't remember how much it was 1200 NZ dollars. Don't know what that equates in US dollars, but it was the 28-70 f2.8 continuous, and that lived on the A7 IV. So I wanted something equivalent, but obviously I didn't want to spend the same amount of money, so I went and bought the 18-50mm Sigma f2.8. It's a great lens. It's one of my favorite lenses for the price, bang for your buck. I believe it's about 600 US dollars versus I think it's the Sigma 24-70 G2 f2.8. That one's double the price, $1,200 if I'm not wrong at this point in time. And it's arguably, yeah, not as sharp, not as tech sharp, but if you're pixel peeping, you'll definitely see the difference, but not to the common eye, not to somebody who doesn't know what to look out for, or who's not swimming into their partner's pimples, you know. If you're watching a wedding video, you're not gonna zoom in on your 4K TV to a point where you can see up someone's nostrils. So yeah, just think about things like that. Think how the viewer is gonna view this. They're not gonna pixel peep. As long as it looks good, I think that you can get away with a little bit in terms of your gear. Also, another great point is the range of your lenses in the APS-C world, because like I said, I got an 18-50 f2.8. I know that equates to, I think it's 28-75 roughly in the full frame view, but there is also 18 to 300. There's so many zoom lenses that cover a vast range of zoom in the APS-C world, so you can definitely keep that in mind when if you really need to get something like a 300mm or something more further. Obviously, because it's an APS-C sensor, it has a 1.5 or 1.6 crop, so a 50mm lens becomes almost a 75-80mm lens depending on your crop factor, which gives you that extra bit of range. So yeah, having an APS-C sensor is definitely can be a benefit to you, and obviously you're saving money, but then you get further with your lenses that you might have already. Another cool thing about APS-C lenses is they can be quite short. This is not the Sigma 18-50, but it's about the same size. And when you compare it to the Sigma 24-70 f2.8, look at that difference. Now, when you want to go out, just say to the park and film your kids or something, you know, you want to be discreet, you don't want to take this with you. You want to take something about this big. And by saying that is, you almost can put it in your pocket, but you wouldn't put this on your FX3. And that's why I've found lately that when I go in and film my kids at the park or riding bikes, I normally pick up my FX30 with my, well, now using 18-50mm lens, zoom lens, and that gives me a massive flexibility in terms of zoom. I can get to where they are without being in my kid's face because it can be a bit shy. So yeah, when you think of portability, the APS-C is a lot easier to sort of disguise a little bit. As I mentioned, my FX30 is now my B cam for my FX3, and the reason for that is that they're both part of the Cine line. They both have the same color signs, or very similar if that. They both have 4:2 color. They both have S-Cinetone, Cine EI, not that I use that, I use S-Log3, but you have that flexibility to actually match those two things and be cohesive within your filming, and it'll be easier to match those two cameras in post. My A7 IV does have S-Log3 and I can match it, but it's a little bit different. You get a different color tints, bit of shift here and there, but you can still do it. It's just a bit easier with your 2 cine lines, which makes it your post-production a bit easier in the long run. Another benefit, and I guess it's for both of these, because before, when I bought this camera, only the FX30 had the ability to save LUTs internally without having to have an external monitor. However, now with the FX3 latest updates, you can definitely put LUTs internally into the camera, so you don't have that constraint anymore. So I guess that's a win for both. So it's no longer a deciding factor for me, or at least now it wouldn't be, but at the time only the FX30 had that feature. So if you're just getting into your filming career and you're still sharpening your skills in terms of composition, on how to frame things, and sometimes you find yourself cropping a lot into the image, you're going to find that the FX30 it will be a bit more sharp, has a sharper image due to its 26 megapixel sensor, whereas your FX3 would only has 12 megapixels. So if you're finding yourself cropping a lot in post, you're going to have a better time with the FX30 just because you have that extra 6K resolution to play with, which is downsampled to a 4K image. And that gives you a lot more flexibility, whereas with the FX3 you only have 12 megapixels, and I believe it's a 4K sensor. So that gives you a little bit less flexibility. If you start cropping too far, you start loosening a bit of the sharpness in the image. One thing about the FX30 and the FX3 for that matter is that they're not photo cameras. Hybrid cameras, if you're a hybrid shooter, I probably wouldn't get the FX30. And that goes depending on the content that you shoot. If you're doing YouTube, short form, maybe like 10 to 15 minute videos, and you want to do some photos, grab the A7 IV or the A6700 if you want to stick with APS-C sensor. But at this point in time, I think you can buy a secondhand A7 IV for cheaper than an A6700. I bought my A7 IV secondhand, and again, I haven't looked back. So great choice, full frame. You know, you got room to grow. You can buy APS-C sensors or full frame sensors with the A7 IV. So yeah, if you're a hybrid shooter, buy the A7 IV. If you're just doing video and sometimes you're taking thumbnail photos or pictures of, you know, family, which is not paid stuff, you can take single. I've taken my FX30 on holidays because of its portability, again because of the lens choice, and a bit smaller, easy to fit in pockets and bags, and I've taken beautiful pictures. Don't get me wrong, it does take beautiful pictures, but it's not as good as the A7 IV with a 33 megapixel sensor. It definitely you can see the difference. So yeah, if you're going hybrid, skip the FX30, go to the A7 IV. I wouldn't bother waiting for the A7 V. I think that's probably going to be, if you're just starting, probably quite high up in your budget range. And I think the A7 IV, it's a killer camera. Yeah, I guess we're talking about the FX30, but that's a notable mention. If you're going hybrid, A7 IV. So to answer the question, if I would buy the FX30 in 2025, my answer would be 100%. I bought this camera 2 years ago and I haven't regretted it once. It definitely had space to grow in my business. I do weddings, I do live events. Sometimes I would rig out my FX3 like a cine rig with V-mount batteries, make it real heavy so I can handheld stuff, and then put my FX30 on a gimbal. And then I've got both options, so I can run and gun, and I don't have to be breaking my rig apart, putting it on the gimbal, then ripping it out of the gimbal again, making the rig back up. So, and again, the images will match in post. It's a seamless transition between the two modes. And ideally, if you've got an A and B cam, that's what you want to do. You want to make your life easier. You want to be able to pick up one and go with the next one, and then work, you know, just be fast and reactive. And that'll, you know, if you one-man band, that's it, that's you, and you have to be quick, you have to adapt. And that's, I think, having an A and B camera that, you know, match so well, it definitely sets you up for success. So if you do buy the FX30 instead of the FX3, or any other camera for that matter that's a bit more expensive than the FX30, use that money to buy a light. If you buy a light, then that will help you out in dark scenarios, and even in weddings. You can buy a spotlight. for the first dance, or if you're doing an interview, you can buy a light to, you know, light your subject. That will probably go a long way, instead of buying an FX3 and hope for the best and have no money. You're gonna have to buy a cheap lens. You're gonna have to, yes, it'll be something that you buy once and don't buy again, but I think you have to take this into baby steps, and you grow into the gear. Once you sort of reach the limit, you upgrade. Once you reach the limit again, you upgrade. Don't just upgrade to the top camera, because that's not going to help you. That's not going to help you. If anything, I would buy some prime lenses as well, which are low f-stop, or the aperture will be like a 1.8 or a 1.4, well, maybe a 1.4 full frame. And that will help you to get more light into the sensor, and it'll improve your image drastically. Whereas if you have a FX3 with a variable aperture lens, which is not very accurate, which is not very sharp, which is, you know, or constantly varying aperture, and a video running gun situation, yeah, post-production is going to be a nightmare. So yeah, those are my final thoughts on the FX30. Would I buy it again in 2025 and 2026? 100%. I pick it sometimes over my bigger, better cameras just because of its portability and how easy it is to carry around. Post-production is just as easy as my A7 IV for the photos, and for the video, the FX3, which I use the same power grades, maybe increase exposure a little bit, or, you know, just colors, everything match. So I have no issues. And I guess, yes, you do have better dynamic range on the FX3. That's a given because of its bigger sensor. I think it's got 15 stops versus 14 stops of dynamic range on the FX30. But that's not gonna, you know, make or break your film or make or break whatever you're filming. It's just, it does look dreamier, it does look better on the FX3, that's for sure. But that's more than double the price of this camera. So is it double the quality? I would say no. The reason I bought my FX3 is because I needed an A cam to my B cam. The A7 IV was overheating, so I could not rely on it forever. So once I could, I bought the FX3. That became my A cam. This will be my B cam for most scenarios, and now my A7 IV is mainly my photo and sometimes B cam, depending on what lens choice I have. If I need a full frame and full frame, so both A and B being full frame, just because of the lens choice that I have, that's what I choose to use the A7 IV as my B cam. But most of the times it'll be my FX30. So yeah, thanks guys for watching. I appreciate you, and if you like and subscribe below, that'll mean the world. If you got any questions, any comments, anything I said wrong, head it down, have a comment, be nice, and yeah, let's see you on the next one. Peace.